Welcome! I'm Johan Nilsson.
And I'm Lincoln Murphy. And this is Impact Weekly.
We're here to help you make your customers successful. Each week, we answer your most pressing customer success management questions by relying on our years of experience with companies around the world.
Let's get this going. All right, so we are back. And it's time for this week's question. And the question is this. I'm getting more and more pressure to upgrade and expand on my customers, but I'm not feeling confident in doing that as it is. What should I do? So this is a customer success manager asking a very, I think, open and sincere question. Let's dig into this one.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of aspects here, and let's zoom out a little bit. I think pressure here. I think we can interpret pressure here both as pressure coming from a boss or a manager saying to this person, "You need to do more expansion on your customers." That's one type of pressure, but I think we also can interpret the pressure where you have your own pressure to do more, and maybe you feel that you're behind. You should be doing more expansion, but you're just not sure on how to do that. So I think we could talk a little bit around both those aspects.
Totally, yes.
And I think like business, I mean, there can be a lot of pressure coming from above if you're in a customer success manager role. I think especially these days, I read a report now looking at reviewing 500 SMB SaaS businesses that they were basically forecasting a 30% drop on average in new business sales in ARR in 2022.
Oh, wow.
So you can imagine that there can be some pressure in those companies where they have probably high growth targets and investors and so on to meet up to those targets with and so on. So I mean, let's start with that one, Lincoln. Yeah. So if like a CEO comes in and says, we're dropping 30% in new business, we need to recover it now on existing customers.
Yeah, I mean, and that makes total sense. You need to sort of hit whatever the projections are that you've shared with your board and investors. It always reminds me though of a client that that brought me in for some consulting, and they had this goal of adding, I don't remember exactly, but some pretty large amount of revenue from their existing customer base, and so they really wanted to focus on expansion, upsells. And we talk about expansion. That's just another way to say upselling or add-ons or whatever, right? Whatever the situation is. And they were really excited to build out a program to expand the revenue from their customer base. And we started looking at things, and it turns out this company sold basically what we would call all-you-can-eat licenses to their customers. So their customers got everything. It got as many users as they wanted. They got access to all aspects of the system for whatever they had already paid. Yeah. So there was a situation where it's great that you wanted to add some revenue from your existing customers, but you had no mechanism to do that. So my first discussion with anybody that wants to expand is, do you have additional things to sell? So let's start there. But assuming that you do, right? Assuming that you do, it makes sense that you would want to turn to your existing customers to generate some additional revenue. I think there's a lot of value that's sitting with our existing customers. Yeah. But to the point of this question and sort of the bigger discussion is, how do you extract that value in a customer-centric way, in a way that isn't going to put undue pressure on the CSM to try to sell customers something that they don't need when they don't need it, because that's what you end up doing when you start putting a lot of focus on, you know, generating revenue from your existing customers rather than looking at it in what I think is the right way, which is as customers sort of become more successful with us, there's going to be logical opportunities for them to increase their relationship with us, to expand their relationship with us.
Yeah. No, I think that's if you apply like new business sales to existing customers, things can go actually really bad, right?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, look, what do salespeople do? They basically are either given a list of people that, you know, sort of match certain criteria, or maybe these people have raised their hand and said, I'm interested in this. But salespeople basically go out into the world and create new customers where there weren't customers before. That's fantastic. That requires a special kind of person. It requires a special skill set, a special mindset, and special tactics. But we already have a relationship with these customers.
Yes.
We don't have to employ those same tactics. And in fact, when you try to employ those same tactics that you would on totally new people with whom we do not have a relationship, you can actually end up hurting the relationship that we have with the existing customer, because we're treating them like we don't have that relationship. So you're right. This requires some, you know, it requires a different way of looking at things. Again, if you're just trying to like look at your existing customers as the same way you would a list of prospects that you don't have any additional context with, you don't have that existing relationship, at best you're gonna experience some incremental growth. But when we look at customers for what they are, which is our existing customers with whom we have a relationship, we have the context, we know what they're trying to accomplish, and we can really figure out where they're going and what that path looks like, that's where you can experience some exponential growth. But it does take a different mindset and a different way of looking at things. And I think that's where that undue pressure of let's extract value from our customers, like that's going to only cause problems, not really do what I think everybody wants it to do, which is, you know, significant growth and everybody's happy.
Definitely. I think that's context. Context here is the key, right? So on the other end of this, sometimes you also like people talk about customer success managers not being commercial. We want them to be more in a not talking about upgrades, not talking commercial discussions. That could be like on another side of the spectra, but that's not good either, right?
No, I mean, this is like the age-old debate in customer success, whether or not CSMs should be commercial. I think if we go back to the question of like not feeling confident in doing this, you know, and expanding the relationship with customers, I think that confidence it's ultimately what you're saying is you don't have confidence in making the customer successful. Yeah. And I think this idea of being commercial or not just is a red herring. It's not an issue that really exists, because nobody is under any delusion that this isn't a commercial relationship. It's right there in your title, customer success. Yeah. The person that you're talking to on the other end of the Zoom call is your customer. You have a commercial relationship with them. They don't think that you're just their friend, right? I think we need to get away from this idea that this isn't commercial. That said, again, we're not trying to sell anybody in the way that you would have to sell a prospect with whom you do not already have a business relationship. But to not be commercial is to not understand that this is already a commercial relationship where the customer is trying to accomplish a goal, and what we would say is, you know, they're trying to be successful. And to say that I don't feel comfortable or I'm not confident in upselling or expanding the relationship with the customer is saying that you're not comfortable making them successful, because a customer that is successful is going to continue to evolve and grow. And assuming there's a logical reason for this, as they evolve and grow, their relationship with us should evolve and grow as well.
Yeah.
That's not anything bad. And you don't have to be salesy to make that happen. You just have to recognize what that evolution looks like and be there as they evolve, as they add new goals, as they accomplish their goals, as they stack goals on top of other goals.
Yep.
There's going to be logical places where expansion makes sense. If you don't present that to them, you are actually doing the opposite of customer success. You're not giving them what they need when they need it. So that's the way we need to be looking at this. So yeah, it's the idea of CSMs not being commercial. I think we just need to put that to rest, because this is a commercial relationship.
Definitely. And I think all of us recognize when we look at our own business or businesses we've been working with, that the customers that are the most successful with us, they have been upgrading, adding more seats, adding more features to the platform. And they almost ask us for it, and they look for it. So I think if we just reflect on it, we see that pattern very clearly. But there's another thing, how to do that and how to proactively do that. And I think if we look back to the question here, if we interpret the question now as this person feeling pressure on how they don't feel confident doing this, how could we help them? What are the steps here to start getting confidence in discussing goals, driving expansion? Where do we start?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. First of all, just at a little bit higher level, and then we'll get into some specifics. But as we've already been talking about, you have to understand that expansion is part of success. So this is just going to be one of those mindset things. Like you're going to have to come to that realization, because if you don't think that, then you're going to think of expansion as something extra. You're going to think of that as something that is, well, it's an add-on. It's not actually part of the customer's just regular success, whatever that means. We need to get that out of your mind, because that you may be getting in your own way there, and ultimately getting in the way of your customer.
Exactly.
Right? This is all about the customer. So just understand that expansion is simply part of their success. And I think that's the first thing. That's the first step in moving into a place where you're not going to feel like this undue extra pressure to do something. This is just part of what you're already doing, which is making the customer successful.
Exactly. And we should start looking not at like the specific, like just the expansion, the sale we want to accomplish, but more the steps to the sale, right? Or to the expansion.
Yeah, I think that's an incredibly powerful point. I think that's actually like, that's great. You said it perfectly. This is not about just the final step in the upgrade, which might be, like adding something to a contract, or it's not about closing the deal. Like that's not how we need to be thinking about this. It's about understanding what that path is that the customer needs to be on in order to achieve their goal, and knowing, like I said earlier, along the way, what are these progress milestones that we would just need to know in general anyway? Like, are they making progress towards their goal? Like that, we need to know that anyway. And then which of those progress milestones, if any, and I'm not saying that they all will, and maybe there's some situations where they won't, but are there any of those progress milestones that have what we would call a logical expansion opportunity associated with it? Yeah. When a customer gets to this point, is there, do other customers like them typically buy an add-on at this point? If so, then you might want to go ahead and tell your customer that, hey, when you get to this milestone, other companies just like you who have this goal, that they're trying to reach, will typically add this product or this add-on or whatever to their account. You're not ready for it right now, but when you are ready for it, we'll talk about adding that to your account. Is that fair? That, by the way, is called orchestration, and it's a powerful concept, and that's something you can start doing immediately to start managing expectations that, hey, at some point down the road, this is something that we can talk about adding to your account.
Just a side point there, back to also the discussion. So the discussion we had in the beginning here around not selling an all-you-can-eat license. These milestones are also a great way to identify new things to add and to add to your plans, to your add-ons, to what you can offer as well, if you don't have them there.
Well, and that goes. So something we were talking about before we actually started recording today, that I think was really interesting, which is just, and I'm interested more on your take on this, Johan. This whole idea of expansion shouldn't just be on the CSM to kind of go through and figure this out for their customers. This needs to be thought of as needs to be approached in a more strategic way.
Yes. And I think there's a lot of people doing a lot of work here, but a lot of companies are still missing a lot of opportunity when it comes to setting up their pricing and plans for a more expansion-focused growth. A lot of people focus very much on the first new business deal and optimizing plans and pricing around that, but forget a little bit about the journey thereafter and how you can set things up that the customer can keep growing with you. And my experience is that if you do that right, they will be even more better customers, more successful customers as well. So this is a big topic, and we probably can't go into all the details here. But looking at this is strategic, and it has huge impact if you get this right, and you can do. Small changes can have big improvements here.
Absolutely. And I think just the idea that so looking at this holistically, thinking about this as actually strategic and figuring out how to operationalize around it. And that's kind of something we run into just with customer success in general, where, companies will sort of cobble together a bunch of tactics and call it customer success, when really what needs to be done is that it needs to be looked at holistically and as a strategy, et cetera. And as a subset of that, expansion needs to also be looked at strategically. And that's way outside the scope of what we can discuss today. And it's certainly outside the scope of what a CSM is going to be dealing with on a daily basis, or even what a head of customer success is going to be dealing with, because a lot of this is going to be at least require collaboration with sales and marketing to a certain extent, and certainly the executive team. But in terms of what the CSM and the head of customer success can sort of control and work on and coach their team on, I think we can give some concrete ideas here.
Yes.
I think the first, so getting into like the very specifics here, I think the first thing that we can talk about, Johan, is what I call positioning.
Yes.
Making sure that that the CSM is really positioned correctly. What's that all
Definitely.
about?
So I think also what we can read from the question here is that this person is not confident in having these discussions with the customer, and that can be both, or that's probably something you feel inside of yourself, but it can also manifest in the way you talk with the customer, interact with the customer. And here is where positioning is key. So if they see you as maybe like a glorified support person, fixing in their account, doing this admin stuff, they will not even talk to you about their goals, about what they want to achieve, what the next steps are, and you will miss that discussion completely. So positioning is really important here to make sure that they see you as a business partner, as someone that they can discuss what they want to do more, how they can achieve more, and so on. So, and positioning is, there's a lot of things you can do around positioning, but you have to think of yourself as that person to start with. I think that's step one. And just as one simple advice there, I think I have really good experience with, is using social proof. So bringing in something you've done with another client, another customer, and sharing that's a way to show this customer that you can help them with business goals, with these things that you want to discuss. So positioning, that will be our number one action to look at for this person now.
Exactly. I love that. I mean, and that's, I think, if you can position yourself really as an authority, right, in the customer's mind.
Exactly.
So to your point, if it's just, and no disrespect to support people, like customer support is a very valuable thing, but it's not customer success. And frankly, if you've been positioned that way, later on when you need to talk to your customer about their goals, because you want to have, maybe they don't have any problem, they see you as a problem solver, and they're at a point where they don't have any problems to solve, and you want to start talking to them about your goals, they might not want to, and that's going to be really challenging, which kind of takes us into the next thing that you can do, which is
just a parallel there. It's, I mean, my wife, she's actually a doctor, but and when she forgets she has like a name tag that says doctor, and when she forgets that and talks to a patient, she gets completely different responses, because they don't see her as a doctor. But when she had that on, then the authority is there. It says doctor, so they listen much more carefully to what she has to say. And I think that applies. We don't have that clear I mean, those titles are not as heavy maybe in our world, but I think it's worth thinking of how you are seen by the customer.
That's an incredible story, and I hate to think of why there might be some of those inbuilt biases. We'll just assume it's simply because the name tag is missing. But yes. I'm gonna assume there's some other negative things going on there. But I think that's a really powerful thing. And you're right. Maybe the title of customer success manager doesn't hold the same kind of weight, which is why we might need to explain. Sometimes customers haven't worked with CSMs before, so they might not know what to expect. Maybe they've worked with companies that have CSMs who are glorified support. Yeah. So you may be working with some inbuilt biases there that you have to overcome actively. So starting out the relationship by positioning yourself as an authority, using that social proof, talking about the customer's goals. Look, when you do all of that and you talk about what the customer is trying to accomplish, let's say in the kickoff call, you start talking about their goals, all of the problems that the customer has that's going to keep them from achieving those goals, they're going to come up. Yep. You just don't start out asking for their problems, right? You start out talking about what they're trying to accomplish, their goals, use that social proof to position yourself as an authority, and then you can talk about all the things that might stand in their way of achieving their goals. Those things will come up. You're not going to not deal with them, but it really comes down to how you start the relationship. So I really appreciate you sharing that story. Yes. There's a lot going on in there. We can't solve all of society's ills today, but in terms of authority positioning, that's a wild story. Okay. Yeah. So go ahead.
Positioning. Yes. Positioning. I think number one of the three things to do. We've been into it already, but the next thing is around goals, right?
Yeah. So once you've positioned yourself as somebody that your customer will want to talk to about their goals, the next thing is we want to make sure that they do that they continue to share what their goals are with us. And we have, customers usually come in with some initial thing that they want to accomplish. But that's not everything for the entirety of their life cycle with us. There's going to be additional goals. There's going to be goals that, after they've met the initial goal, maybe the initial goal is going to change before they meet it. That's just how things work. They don't, Goals aren't always met before the next one is pivoted to.
Exactly.
Maybe they start adding additional goals. And the whole point is you want to be able to have those conversations, and you want your customer to think of you when their goals change or when they add new ones, so that you can have that conversation, so you can talk to them about what they're going to need to do in order to achieve those. And there's probably going to be some place in there where expansion is going to be a natural part of that conversation. Those are the kind of conversations you want to be having. So that goal discovery that continues, I think, is just absolutely critical. So you want to create an environment where your customer is going to feel comfortable sharing those things, thinking of you first, ideally, when those new goals come up, so that they come to you and you can start working with them on the plan to move forward. So positioning is critical in that sense, and then just continuing that goal discovery is super important.
So you have positioned yourself right. You have these good discussions with the customer. You see the goals ahead of you. The customer is talking about them. How do we? The last thing now. How do we put it all together? So,
yeah, one of my absolute favorite, I call it a sort of a psychological framework, is this concept of orchestration. And I already mentioned it a little bit earlier, but just to be absolutely clear on what we're talking about here, orchestration is really managing expectations at the end of the day. That's what it comes down to. But we're doing it in a very specific way. We're basically telling the customer, hey, look, when you get to this progress milestone, and this progress milestone has an expansion opportunity for the customer attached to it. We will tell them, look, when you get to this progress milestone, and by the way, don't use that term with the customer, tell them exactly what that milestone is. So like, when you close your 10th customer through our CRM or whatever, like, you're going to be specific. When you get to this point, other customers like you, or some phrasing like that, have added this thing, this add-on or additional capacity, or they brought other departments into it, something like that. They've done that at that success milestone. Now, you're not, or at that progress milestone, you're not ready for that right now. So we don't have to talk about adding that to your account, but I want you to be aware of it, so that when you get to that progress milestone, we'll have that conversation. We'll talk about adding that to your account. Is that fair?
Yeah.
That little psychological framework. And by the way, we go into a lot more detail on this in our Impact Academy training, but if you don't do that, you can sort of take what we're talking about here and use it. But the whole idea here is, think about this. So talking about confidence and in being able to expand, have the conversation around expansion. What did I just do in that orchestration process? I just told the customer, I could try to sell you something. Like, we have this add-on, we have this other product, whatever. I could try to sell this to you, but I'm not going to, because you're not ready for it. That is like a level of trust that is completely unexpected, because in every other situation they would expect to be sold to. And you're saying, no, you don't need it right now. When you do need it, we'll talk about adding it to your account. I'm not saying when you do need it, we'll add it to your account. I'm just saying we'll have a conversation about it.
Yeah.
And then I'm asking you if that's fair. In my experience, and I listen to a lot of calls with CSMs, a lot of recorded calls, I've never had a customer say, no, that's not fair. They might have questions,
of course,
but nobody has ever said, no, that's not fair. I don't ever want you to bring that up. And then when you do bring it up later, because again, there's some psychology there where we've planted the seed. The customer says, the customer might even be excited that they reached this progress milestone, and now they can use this thing that was talked about some time ago. It's amazing. At the very least, if they're not excited about it, at the very least, they're not blindsided by this conversation that could lead to an expansion. Whereas so going back to what we talked about earlier, most new business sales approaches to expansion are to kind of blindside the customer with an offer when they don't need it, and this is why as a CSM, you might get an email from your customer saying, hey, why is your sales team reaching out to me? If you haven't experienced that, you probably will at some point. That's the sales team trying to sell them something they don't need when they don't need it.
No, but this is extremely powerful. And I would even say that I've seen some examples now of really modern companies working together with new business sales on underselling, or at least not overselling on the plans and the add-ons in to do exactly this. If the customer and working out good bonus structures and so on that works together here. So I think this is, I've seen this so many times as well. It's this is how you do really well with expansion.
Totally, and I the whole. I just want to. You touched on something really important there. So a couple things. I want to make sure this isn't an us versus them thing when it comes to sales. I'm just saying a lot of times sales is sort of running the show and they're just applying new business tactics because that's what they know and that's what they're good at. And that's why we need them, because they need to go out and get new business, invent it basically out of thin air. But when you were talking about sort of, underselling or not really stacking the initial sale with like everything possible, I think that there is, again, going back to new business mindset there, salespeople who are incentivized, basically they get a cut of the initial sale. They want to make that sale as big as possible. So, to your point, you need to think about, again, this is multifactorial and it's outside the scope of customer success, but there needs to be a different incentive structure for salespeople. If we're going to say, don't try to sell everything at the beginning, then the salesperson needs to be sort of compensated, should they have a smaller initial deal size. But I think also there is generally a lack of trust in the process by everybody involved to say, well, let's sell a little bit up front so we can expand a lot later. If there's no trust in that expansion process, no understanding of it, because nobody's ever put in the effort to create a strategy around it, it's like, well, maybe we should just try to sell everything up front.
Yeah.
Right? Because
exactly.
and yeah, so it's a balancing act. Yeah, it's challenging.
It is. You really, if you get both working together here, I think there is a lot of power in this, and then the customer will get used to this. What we're talking about now. If we can start even from the initial sale, that they will be introduced to things they will get later on, then you can keep building on that. I think you will also teach the customer how we work. We want you to achieve this goal, and then you get ready for next, and so on. So I think there's a lot here to talk about. We're gonna wrap it up now, but very important topic. And even if you can't control everything around this, you can always bring it to your attention to your team, head of customer success or the management, and give them ideas around this as well. I think that's always appreciated, and you have probably the best insights here into how this works in practice with your customers. So wrapping it up, so 3 things to do if you lack confidence in working with expansion sales. Positioning, make sure you position yourself with authority to your customer. Goal discovery, you need to continue the goal discovery after the sale has been done, after onboarding. Continue goal discovery, and the last thing here is the most important one: to orchestrate that the goal is also linked to an upgrade, an expansion, and work on achieving the goal with the customer. And then you will do great. Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Hey, thanks for listening. Do you want to bring your customer success to the next level? Check out Impact Academy. We have training programs for customer success managers and for leaders in customer success.